2, and 3. Well, now, that is most unfortunate. It seems signal was lost, and it seems to be back. I wonder why that happened. Everything just seized up and shut down, and then it came back online. You seem to be active again. Unfortunate how that happens. Anyway, as I was saying, we've been having some problems with the Discord. Well, not severely, but it is a bit of a problem for me. It was becoming spam for other channels. And so thus we're eliminating those that are not, the ability of people who are not alphas from being able to post their links as to where their channels are happening. If you're an alpha, then no problem. You're welcome to do it. But people that are, not alphas, they don't get that ability anymore. And that will probably be the case for a long time, because I don't want it to become a spam channel. So, I know, unfortunately for those that want to use it, but if it's more motivation to become an alpha. How do you become an alpha on the channel? Just by engagement. Just by being a member of it for long enough that I recognize who you are. And I recognize most of the people on there. There's 2 people there that I don't fully know because they haven't spoken up a whole lot. But everyone else I know. You just have to be, regular enough to where I know that what your intentions are. I'm sure pitiful when it comes to the, what the heck? There we go. I'm sure I'm pitiful when it comes to, streaming. I am definitely not a pro. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm not meant to be a pro. I'm meant to be genuine. In a world that is increasingly disingenuous. I have noticed over the last couple of years just the sheer number of people that are kind of begging for the for genuineness, and I've been very wary about that because somebody that I once knew reached out to me around the time when I was in college. I just graduated, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, it's been a long time since we've chatted. Man, I wanted to catch up with you." And he showed up, and I was like, okay, that's great. I knew the guy. I knew some of his backstory. And so it wasn't odd to have that happen. What was odd was when he tried to tell me about a pyramid scheme that he was a part of. And what got me thinking about this recently is because I saw a meme posted about this just recently. And people were laughing at this and saying about how true it is that the person that reaches to you out of the blue many times has a pyramid scheme. Well, that's not always the case. In fact, there's a lot of times people will reach out to you that have no ulterior motives other than to try and connect with you again. Unfortunately, the internet has made that a lot more difficult. The ability to be genuine with folks kind of disappeared as social media took over. Let me double check something. Crumble's glitching out here. Stay by just a second. All right, there we go. It is operational again. So people that reach out of the blue, they can be genuine. But it is amazing to me, the number of people that have complained that how disingenuous the internet feels. Which is ridiculous, because it should be like one of the places where it's the easiest to tell how genuine someone is. And yet at the same time, it has become the culmination of every disingenuous action that could really be taken. People are scammed, people are flaky, they're being fake in all sorts of ways. Or they're being exploitative, which is another big problem. But again, it doesn't need to be that way. The only reason why it really became like that is because, honestly, people began to value their wallet more than human beings. So thus, it's no wonder that the internet became so poisonous. But this raises the question, can you be able to kind of reverse that trend? Debatable. As I saw with my friend. When he realized that he made a mistake of reaching out to me about the pyramid scheme, I didn't tear him down, but he could tell that some trust had been broken. I was wanting to give him another try, but when he had his second chance, actually third chance by that point, he was trying yet again to get me in on the pyramid scheme. And I was like, nope, that's it. We're not doing this. And so I just I didn't tell him no. I just basically ignored him. And that was enough. He caught on and he stopped chatting, which is a shame because I really do wish that he would have, that he could have improved. I'm gonna do his hair differently. I'm so bad when it comes to hair. Especially in this style. So anyway, I've been thinking about this genuineness. Because somebody recently made this comment about how they needed to find a way to improve their online business. And in doing so, they basically told folks that, hey, if you're my friend, you'll invest into my business. Did everything just freeze again? Oh, there we go. Which, of course, it doesn't take a genius to know that that's just out of line. It's your business. You shouldn't be basically threatening people like, hey, if you're my friend or not, I'll know based upon whether or not you like the stuff that I have done. There's a friend of mine who really, really does not like the stuff that I've made. And I'm not exaggerating that either. He wholeheartedly dislikes the stuff that I've made in the past. And tried to cause me some immense frustration once. I'm not going to be able to change him. And if I try to go along and say, hey, you know what? Just give it another try. That's not necessarily a wise thing. He's allowed to dislike it. I like how soft that turned out. But doesn't it fit with the rest of the style here? It's a little too blue. Let's change color here. I wish you could hide the selection there. Yeah, it's good enough. It's a small part of the overall painting, so it's not like people are going to be looking in really close to it. And if you look at fine artwork made by the greats, sometimes their faces in the background are very simple. I do want Milo's eyes to be a bit redder in this one, just because this helps to look to his past a little bit. So genuineness. How do you show genuineness when so many people are just used to being used or trying to use people when it comes to the web? Well, one of the things you can do is just to maintain a sense of decorum. Don't give in to the hypes. Don't lash out at people. Try your best to be as calm as possible. That will help to open up the door and allow people to look to you as someone who's not trying to play the internet games. And they'll be more willing to kind of give you a little bit of a pass, especially when you mess up. But once you go down the process of trying to play into the internet's games of hype or some of the nonsense that goes on, you lose people fast. You lose people very fast. How do I have this set up again? It's not a clipping mask. It started out as that. Why can I not get that to... Why is it erasing like that? Odd. Oh, that's it. Because there's this background right back here. I need to get rid of that, actually. Completely forgot about that. Actually, maybe I can do the clipping mask now. I'm trying to remember how I had originally set this up. Oh, that's fast. That's right. Oh, yeah, that's how I was doing it. But one thing I have noticed with a lot of online groups, people lie so much. And thus makes it very hard to be genuine when everyone just assumes that things need to be a certain way. Let's say, for example, you have a beef with somebody. Things went bad. Everyone expects you to be friends and just move on. Even if somebody behaved horribly, you're just supposed to go on as if nothing happened. And no one's allowed to know what happened either. I don't believe that's healthy for anybody. I'm somebody that believes that that secrets kill. And I have seen this come about in many, many ways. Where I see that somebody with initially good intentions will avoid saying something because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. Or they want to try and get something. Let's say that there's a businessman and you disagree with them, but you're not going to say it openly. Well, something like that eventually will come out. So it's better to be genuine about your critiques, about your criticisms. And that way, when they finally learn, they will know that you don't mean ill by it. I have known people, though, that they can't hold back. And they will say whatever comes to their mind about somebody, and it destroys them very quickly. Destroys other people very quickly. When you do stuff like that, you don't seem very genuine to folks. And over time, people will start to see that. And your ability to try and build up that genuineness gets lost. Then people get upset and they say, why is no one genuine? By the way, I'm rambling a bit, so this happens sometimes when I'm trying to come up with ideas I want to flesh out later on, especially when there's no one really watching. And right now, there really isn't anybody that's watching right now, so thus gives me the luxury of getting to explore an idea to kind of tease it out. This is kind of what goes on in my head on a regular basis, trying to come up with answers to questions that I'll just ponder it throughout the day. One thing I got to make sure is to draw a distinction between Yukon and the horse that Milo's riding in this scene. It's supposed to be a different horse, so got to make sure to do that distinction. Well, today feels a bit thwarted. Program just crashed. Thankfully, it didn't lose everything. Better save an iteration of this. And we're going to start compressing this, because when it does that, the file has gotten too big. It was meant to be. That was a close one. What it did was it glitched, and it was trying to crop the image. I hate that that option was even there to begin with. All right, we're going to prevent that from happening again. That means we're going to have to start compiling some of this stuff. Hesitate to do this, but I have the other file preserved, so I can be able to collapse this with relatively few concerns. But I want to keep the outline preserved, so make sure the outline is not selected. Keep that as the outline. Merge selected layers. Right, that was the biggest part of this file. Hopefully we can proceed forward again without crashes. So here's a question. Because it can become fairly easy to get discouraged in moments kind of like that where things just are not panning out. But here's something to think about. Does that mean that you're dealing with a curse? I mean, people joke about that. Say, oh, I must be cursed. But I've not heard a whole lot of people actually say one way or the other where they stand on the matter. I'll hear people joke about it. Actually, people joke about it a little too carefree, in my opinion. Because it's actually a fairly serious matter to say something like that. Thus raises the question. We had the games earlier crash multiple times. Had this program freeze up and crash. But I have heard people say on a very regular basis, I feel cursed. So thus raises the question, is there such a thing? Yes, but it doesn't happen the way that people think. Now, scripture mentions about this, but it's not cursing in the sense of like, oh, I just got cursed by somebody who shouted out something. No, that's not how it happens. Now, if a prophet does that, then yes, that would happen. But last I checked, there's not a whole lot of prophets that go around cursing people. What is more likely happening is you're starting to encounter frustrations. And frustrations will happen regardless of whether or not you're cursed or not. What's more likely happening is it's a bit of things that you could have planned ahead better on. There's some areas where maybe it could have been something where it was something you did in preparation. Maybe it could be a state of mind. But there are a couple of occasions where you are actually dealing with a curse. Now, what I'm dealing with right now is not necessarily a curse unless it is actually designed to spur on this conversation point. In that sense, it would be a blessing. But the reason why it actually does happen is usually because you are going against something that God wants. Now that may sound like, oh, well, that's borderline superstitious. You could say that. But I have seen this actually happen a couple of times. Whether it's my own life or in the lives of others. A wise man learns from his own mistakes. Well, a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from another man's mistakes. Sometimes you learn from both. That makes you knowledgeable and wise. Or something like that. But what I have seen with something like that is people can get overly discouraged. And we think, oh, I must be cursed. Forgetting the fact that what if it's a test? A test of your character. Well, that's the same thing as being cursed, right? Not entirely. See, being tested is not a bad thing. To be tested is actually trying to see where your merit is. God may be testing you to see how you respond under pressure. What is in your heart will eventually come to the surface. And frustration is one of the quickest, most sure ways to get that to come out of you. The book of Job actually has something similar to that. God is happy with Job. He praises him in front of the heavenly hosts. And Satan comes along and makes a wager and says, hey, I'll bet I can get Job to curse you. And God says he's basically perfect. He will not do that. And so Satan smites him. Was he cursed? Yeah, but is also for a good reason. Well, may not seem like a good reason to mankind, but it was for a good reason. And in the end, he served as a teaching point for all generations. So was he cursed? You could say yes. But we like to think in our modern day that a curse is most likely related to something superstitious. And then sometimes we're dealing with a problem of man and we feel like we're cursed, but it actually is more like we're being thwarted by messed up men, you could say. Let's say that you're a great performer. You go on the stage every day, and people love you, and they are coming from far and wide to see your performance. Then one day you slight a good friend in the business, and suddenly they start wishing ill upon you, and then bad things start happening. You think, oh, that guy must have cursed me. And then it turns out that all he was doing was thwarting you. He'd go and mess up the mics. And then the sound would start causing problems. You'd make sure that there was he put like sand in your shoe. Or I think of things that are fairly benign, okay? But it is something where I have seen a man's bitterness that gets kind of perceived by somebody as a curse. Or something as simple as your tech just stops working. It doesn't mean you're cursed. It means that you're dealing with the faults of, well, somebody else, and you're just unfortunately having to encounter that. Doesn't mean you're cursed. But you shouldn't be so quick to just write off all thoughts that you may be cursed. You may be dealing with something that is far more severe. In that sense, you have to be willing to seek out constantly and say, Lord, what is it that I can do better? Where should I improve? Be willing to keep striving to become better. Because we have a short time on this earth. And it would be better if we go through it learning from our mistakes and not having to be told in very harsh ways that we have messed up. Trying to stay up to trying to do the same art style consistently is something I've always struggled with. If you were to watch a time lapse of all the times I've tried to paint on this piece of artwork, you will see the style change constantly. It's one of my biggest flaws when it comes to art. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a professional artist. I'm a hobby artist in that sense. Some people have said, no, you're a professional. I disagree. I am definitely not a professional. I have met professional artists, and I think the people that have said that I'm a good artist are just saying it kind of out of pity. I'm a learning artist. I'm not terrible, nor am I great. I'm learning. I'm trying to get better. But it is something where you have to be able to look at your skills and say, yeah, something turned out well. Most of it didn't. And with that sort of mentality, you're able to address the problems and get better. That's the big thing. If you're not improving, well, that's a big problem. See, I had a manager a couple of years ago. He was a very depressed man. I feel sorry for him in many ways. I wish he didn't have this mentality, but you can't force your mentality upon someone else. He said, sure is sobering when you are getting older, and then you look back on life and you think, all the way up until the age of 30, you're waving hello to the world. Then after the age of 30, you're just waving goodbye. What a depressed worldview. I say that with full sympathy of that man. He was a broken fella. A lot of things that he had done had kind of fallen to pieces. And so thus, he had become a bit cynical. And his depression showed. Now you can go through life depressed and still be able to be just fine. I do believe that. But you have to have the right mindset. No, you can't avoid depression. But what you can do is decide to say whether or not you're going to allow it to control you. I view it differently. See, that's not my mindset of that, you're just waving goodbye to the world. No, it's more like you're in the position. For most of your life, you're just getting started. For most of your young life, you're just getting started. No one will give you credit. No one will give you respect or honor. And then you reach a point where people start doing that. And then things start to change. You're no longer the person that needs to have their hand held. You're the one who starts holding the other person's hand. You become a source of building up someone else. It's a position of honor and respect. It's not a bad thing. But my manager back then, that was how he saw the world. He saw the world with just that, just waving goodbye to it. Now, there is one thing that I kind of would put that same sort of mindset on, but it's not based upon your age. It's more based upon whether or not you're growing or not. If you're not growing, you're dying. That's my philosophy. Is it similar? It's similar, yes, but it's definitely not the same thing. See, I view it in the sense of that you have the ability to keep growing. Otherwise, the moment you stop growing, you start solidifying. And I've met people, many people like this. They get to the age of like 25 and like, okay, I've learned enough. Time to just coast. No, you have to keep growing. If you don't grow, you die. That's my mentality. And it's not a bad one either. I've seen people waste away, people that I knew at college, The moment they reach like 25 or 30, they stopped improving. They're like, oh, too late to learn that. And I'm like, no, keep learning, keep growing. Because your mind has to stay flexible. What was that term where it's like, I can't remember. It's like a version of plastic or something like that, of where it's like a term that has like its roots in like, I don't remember. See, I need to practice on my vocabulary. That's what I need to practice on. But basically, it's trying to maintain a flexible brain. Because if it's flexible, it means it can still be taught. You don't want to get to your old age and say, I can't teach an old dog new tricks. I've met old folks that were able to keep learning all the way up to the very end. The only thing that keeps people from growing like that, from staying mentally sharp like that, in my personal opinion, because I've not experienced it yet, I've not reached the old age stage and be able to say for certain if this is how it happens, but I believe you have to keep learning. You have to keep learning, never stop. Because if you stop, that's when your brain starts getting sluggish. And it stops repairing in a way. A while back, I started learning Japanese. Some people said that you're too old for that. And yeah, I agree. I am actually quite too old for that. But I wanted to stay sharp. And so I started learning it. And was I going to become fluent? I don't know. Maybe I will one day. But it sure took me a lot longer than the others to try and figure out. But it's not bad. You got to be able to stay flexible in the mind. And believe me, when you reach your 30s, you start to feel it. Like if you're not using your brain, if you're not stretching, you can feel it solidifying. It's kind of like, let's say you have a glass cup. You can see the contents very clearly. If you were to take some sort of mixture and put it into there, you will watch as whatever it is starts to layer. Put sand in, you're going to start seeing a layer of sand appear at the bottom. Especially if it's fine sand, it will float a little bit, but eventually it'll reach the bottom. Get some oil, and it will float on the top. Well, eventually, you'll reach a point where it will be clear, clean water in the middle, oil on top, sand in the bottom. Now take that and start stirring it. It mixes together. But eventually, it will start to settle out again. By learning, by constantly finding something else to stretch your brain around, it's like taking that mixture and swirling it up again. But the moment you stop, then it starts to reform back into its 3 distinct layers. If you want to be able to use your mind in old age, you have to be able to start staying sharp here and now. No, you will not be Einstein if you, not like I don't think Einstein was very smart, in my personal opinion, but that's besides the point. But you're not going to be Einstein or some other great thinker, necessarily. But what you can be is just, you can avoid becoming that crazed old man that maybe you remember growing up. And you're like, how did he end up being so kooky? Well, based upon the people I've seen, in part, it is because they stopped growing. And you have that ability to avoid that. But you have to stay sharp. You have to keep exploring, keep expanding. Otherwise, it eventually will catch up with you, and you will regret it. And I've already seen that happen to people. Quite a few people, actually. I've also felt it myself. Thankfully, my brain hasn't solidified too much. God has been merciful in that sense. But eventually it will get harder and harder, and maybe one day I'll say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I refuse to believe that. Even in my old age, I will refuse to believe it, and I will keep straining and stressing. And just like the tree, from when I've told you before, the story about if a tree doesn't have wind and whatnot, I will be the person that is seeking out wind to keep straining my branches, you could say. So that way I don't become weak over time. And eventually, I hope to be able to gracefully come to old age and to still be able to carry on conversations with a youth and pass on whatever words of wisdom that I can. Maybe they'll care, maybe they won't. But that will be my goal, to be maybe that wise old sage that people know will give them thought-provoking ideas. Maybe I'll be kooky, but I want to try and be as flexible as possible, so that way I'm able to contribute and still help people in my old age. Which raises an interesting point. What is the point of what's the purposes of your old age? Are you going to go through life and then just come towards the end and say, okay, now it's time to coast? Is that what you're going to do? Or are you going to say, nope, there is no such thing as coasting. You sleep when you're dead. You retire when you pass on to the next life. I gotta say, I've observed enough retirees to where I refuse to become a traditional retiree. Sure, I might not be able to do everything sharply, and people may say, get out of the way, old man. I hope not, but it's possible. But I still want to try and do something to help out people. And maybe that helping will be in the form of, maybe I'll become like John Avery Whitaker and own an ice cream shop. I don't know. There was someone that I knew back at college, and everyone was around the table talking about what they were going to do in their old age. And the vast majority of them said very clearly that they planned to live the fun retiree life. They were going to go out to a golf course every single day, or others of them were going to go traveling the world on all the cruises, and there were going to be others that were going to be going around the old retiree home with their motorized scooters, throwing socks at each other. That was what one of them said. I thought it was the dumbest thing then, and I still think it is incredibly dumb, but not the dumbest I've heard since. But here's the reality of it. You're placed here on this earth for a purpose. Sure, you may go through this entire life and never truly know what your purpose is. Doesn't mean that you don't have a purpose. It just means that you don't have the full understanding of what that purpose is. God does not tell us what that purpose is, usually. And if so, then usually we're given just a small bit, lest we try and take control. You gotta be flexible. You gotta be willing to adjust to what He wants. If I had my wishes, I would have been making Hollywood films by now. I would have been making huge blockbusters. I already have a couple of stories planned out. I would have been happy as could be to be able to finally tell those stories. And I had honorable reasons for wanting to tell those stories. You can see I'm not there. And you know what's interesting? If I had gone through with it, I'd be in a pretty tough bind right now. Hollywood is crashing. And if I had been there, you know what? The projects I have in my mind, they would have died there in Hollywood. Or they would have been brutalized and destroyed by people who have no love of the story. And thus I would have lost it. Whereas now, I still hold on to the hope and dream I'll get to tell those stories. If nothing else, I'll get to write some books about it. But I've given up on the thought of that I'll be the great Hollywood director of the future. I'm no longer going to be... There's no way that I'll be able to be the next George Lucas, even though that in my mind that's what I wanted to be. Or the next Walt Disney. That was not my lot. Could it have been? Yeah, if God wanted. Maybe it could have happened. Maybe I fumbled something up. I don't know. But I do know this, that the purpose is not lost entirely. Nor is it lost for anyone. But I do have to wonder about some people. When they get to their older age, some of them just check out. Like, okay, I did that. Now it's me time. All time is God's time. In your old age, you may be required to build an ark, like Noah. You may be called to be a father, like Abraham. You may be called to be a prophet. Or you may be called just to be a good neighbor, which is probably the position the majority of us will end up in. To be kind to our neighbor is something that in our older age, we're going to have a lot more time to do. Sure, we might not be able to be captains of industry, but we can at least be a blessing to those around us. And in your old age, you have that ability, whether you're a retiree or not. But do not embrace self, because that will end badly. Oh, but I know George over there is having the funnest time in his old retiree age. Yeah, sure, he's having the time of his life. But you know what? He will be lacking purpose, drive, motivation. But if you stay a servant, you will always have drive. You will always have motivation. Because you know that you are storing up a treasure in heaven that cannot be compared with. The older you get, the more you'll start to understand what that treasure is. By the way, folks, if you find anything of merit around here, whether it's the art or the rambling, consider liking the stream, comment if you so desire, or dislike it if you so feel. I will accept that too. It means that you're still flesh and blood, and that you gave me a little bit of your time to stop by and basically hear some of my senseless ramblings. My goal is to try and offer some sort of wit and wisdom during these streams, and especially since the online world is so full of noise and kind of the same old stuff left and right. Same adrenaline packed stuff. Well, that's not me. And I want to try and give people a little bit of what the older age used to be like, or at least the better part of the older age used to be like. An age that I was never a part of, but I grew up as if I was. I've told this story before, but basically, I felt like I was actually growing up in the 40s or the 50s. The stuff I saw was media from around that time. Actually, most of what I saw was from the 30s to the 50s was what my media consumption consisted of for a good portion of my life. And in my mind, I actually did think, even though I grew up in the 90s, I did think that I was actually in an era that didn't exist anymore. Imagine my shock when I started to realize that I had inherited the modern world. And man, when I realized that, I was so disheartened. Because I had learned the rules and the customs and the traditions of a bygone era that no longer applied. Tell you what, it's tough when someone who is older looks back and says, you know, the world's not the same as it used to be. I remember when I was a kid, and man, the world made sense. I grew up and I saw the world change before my eyes. Well, now imagine that happening to somebody who is in their early teens, you could say, and then suddenly realizing, dang, mentally I feel like I belong to a different era. In that sense, I've kind of already come to terms with the fact that I don't live in that world. I still try and hearken to some of the values that I learned from that. I had no knowledge of the 70s, no knowledge of the 60s. It was strange to actually find out from people later on, because I didn't have a whole lot of friends into my teenage years. And so I just had, before the age of 10, I basically grew up somewhere between, I grew up in the 90s, but I was growing up with a sense of the older era that had come before. But when I reached my teens, I suddenly realized that I was in the modern era, and I finally actually became familiar with what my peers were consuming culturally, and it disgusted me. No, I don't mean like Pokemon disgust me or whatnot. I was a big Pokemon fan. I lived in Japan. But what disgusted me was things like SpongeBob and a lot of the other stuff that came along with it. Video game culture, I did not grow up with that. Didn't grow up with a lot of the music that my peers did. So when it came to trying to make friends, that made things a lot more difficult because I didn't have a foundation that I could be able to share with them. again, it's not a bad thing, actually. And in fact, I think it's a better way to grow up. Now, it does make it a little bit harder when you're trying to connect with those that are within your age group, because suddenly you realize, as time goes on, that the things that people can bond over, you can't bond with them. I didn't grow up in a sports family, and I think sports is kind of silly in many ways. Politics gets too sensitive for most people. Religion became a hot topic. And I couldn't stand the video game culture that existed. And I also didn't get a chance to participate in it at all. So, but yeah, all these things kind of culminated in creating a very strange sort of person in that sense, to the point of where people at college were like, "Dang, you remind us more of our grandfather than anything else." And it wasn't just that I was a year or two older than most of my peers. It was just the fact that I became kind of a symbol of, oh, that's the sort of stuff that our grandparents would have said. Not even our parents would have said that sort of stuff. And so thus I got the nickname of Grandpa. At first I was a bit humiliated by that. It's like, come on, folks. But then I realized that I really was different. And it just took me a while to come to terms with it. This is a lot of work on a picture for not much. I like to think that somehow these things are going to be of merit. But in all likelihood, someone will look at this for a minute most, and that will be it. The average amount of views I get on Instagram, for example, is... I think it's like 5 to 7 likes on anything. For the amount of hours that goes into these things, it can that can be a little weird to post things like that and then see that interaction is kind of minimal. Now, that's one of the benefits of this one, is that this one was a commission. So thus, it becomes a little bit more fulfilling in the sense that you're actually doing it for somebody. Now, it's a very old commission, and I regret that it took me this long. But it still gives me the motivation to want to do it well, or at least as well as I can. There, it's kind of a similar sort of texture, but it's a little bit different enough to where you can tell that's a different creature here. I'm gonna have to go back and touch up the colors on Yukon back there, or maybe I'll do a different blending. Like I'll turn the saturation down and I'll do something else afterwards. But that way, none of the textures or the brush strokes are changed. But I need to speed up. Put way too much time into this sort of stuff. Even if it's for the best intentions, people want to see the final rather than, well, in other words, it's just not super beneficial to go all out, especially when you don't have like a really solid skill set. I'm still experimenting with this stuff. Like, I'm not like this. I tried to just duplicate right there and I failed. That's going to happen. We're going to get through Yukon tonight, and then we're going to be calling it at that point, so you can tell we're it's going to go faster at this point because the details are going to get a little bit less, but it's still going to take probably about an hour to get this done. I think it's time to change the music here. It's already gone on a loop. Kind of want to have something different to listen to at this point. Kind of think if there's some other Christmas music I can be able to add. You know, something that's not gonna flag the copyright stuff. I mean, that already flags the copyright system, which it really shouldn't. The guy's been dead for a very long time. But it likes to try and say, "Oh no, that's not a free version you can use." Well, it was where I got it. It said that it was Creative Commons, so unless the report was wrong, but still, the music is not copyrighted. Maybe I should ask some musicians out there if they have any renditions of like Christmas traditional music that I could play. Not like I don't know a whole lot of musicians these days, but I do know a couple here and there. There's something I started to explore the other day, and I ended up taking the stream down from YouTube, but although it's still up on Rumble. It has to do with a very deep topic, one that I want to explore in depth. This is not the stream that I'm going to explore it on depth, but I want to mention it again because I want people to hear it multiple times, potentially, so they can have some time to think about it before the big discussion takes place. And this one's a tough one. It's one I don't think a whole lot of people have spent time considering. And it does have to do with AI, but it's slightly different than what you're probably expecting. Well, maybe you are. How much do you trust an AI to make the right decision? How much do you say, you know what? Sure, is it going to get things wrong? Yeah, but everyone gets things wrong. I'm willing to at least give it a try. I mean, it gets things right like 50% of the time. Maybe one day it will be 70, then 80%, then maybe we'll never get to 100%, but it'll get pretty close. How many people are going to say, it's good enough. Let's embrace it. I heard someone say something very, very troubling years ago, back before AI really took off. He was very frustrated with our country. And he said, why can't the world just function like a computer? What? Yeah, like government. Maybe not industry, but government. Why can't government function like a computer? Computers are cold, calculating. That's not a good way to live. Oh, forget all that stuff. I mean, what happens if, we get it just to the point where it can do all the necessary functions without human intervention? It would get rid of corruption. The problem of that mindset, which I didn't fully address at the time, I tried to, but it was all so theoretical that no one was really giving it any real consideration. They were all so hyped up on, oh, this is so cool if this was to be real, that they weren't willing to consider, that's actually really scary to think about, because that is going to happen within our lifetimes. You do realize that, right? It's going to happen within our lifetimes. People are going to push for a machine to replace government. How am I so sure about this? I'm not saying that it will replace it. I'm saying there's going to be a push for it. Because I've started to see them saying this again. And it's not the crazed friends that I had back in the day. No, these are people who are saying, government's just way too corrupt. Let's just put an AI in charge. Doge did that, and look at all the efficiency they came up with. It's going to be argued. I want you to think about that. There is going to be a movement of people who tell you, let's get rid of voting because an AI will do the job for us. Do you know how utterly terrifying that is? It will be something people push for. Some people are already surrendering their daily decisions to an AI. Some people are already surrendering parenting to an AI. Oh, but they were already surrendering it to the TV and to the internet. Different. Those are still run by people. Sure, they act like robots, but they're still people. Now, you're giving it over to a machine and hoping the machine shows some humanity. Is that not terrifying? One day, somebody will say, let's just trust the machine. It will become the Matrix, literally. And this is no longer theoretical. Sure, it's theoretical that it can actually do everything that it claims to do. I do not believe that AI is really as efficient as people make it out to be. But it doesn't stop people from wanting it to happen, from preparing themselves to embrace it. The next generation is going to have a lot of people who were raised by a machine, who were taught by a machine. Those people are going to worship the machine. And they're going to view the machine as maybe not incorruptible, but better than any human being. This is happening. It's not going to happen. It is happening. The groundworks are being laid. The world's getting ready. And some elites are pushing for this. I'm saying some pushing for it. I do believe more than just a few are doing it. But I think they're being secretive in it. I think they know that this will become the way that they control the masses. By controlling the machine that controls the masses. It's really sad. I know so many people that when that day comes, are going to embrace the machine and say, thank you so much. Even people I really like are going to say that. Those people will be cut off to me. Because they will have crossed a line so egregious. Have you wondered if eventually there's going to be a dark spirit that takes over the machine? Oh, that's not possible. Really? Really? I think the people are starting to realize that spirits are real. And I think some nation is going to give itself over to the machine. And then whatever evil demon is waiting is going to have its way. I feel like there's some areas in scripture that kind of hint that it's plausible, maybe not possible, but a plausible possibility for some of the things in Revelations. I refuse to embrace the machine, period, because it's an abomination to what God has made. God said that we are supposed to be his hands and feet. He didn't say that a machine was going to take our place. He made us. He didn't make a robot. He made flesh and blood. We made the machines. Sure, it was with the knowledge of how life is made, by watching how God made things. It doesn't make it good. It doesn't mean that his blessing is on it. No. If anything, it's an abomination because it defiles how he set up the world. I do mean defile. I think it's going to be that one day we look back on this age and people are going to view our generation as one of the most evil, perverted, disgusting generations in human history. It'll be because we rejected humanity. Look at the transhumanists. Look at what they believe. They believe they're creating a deity. They believe that somehow this deity is going to help them to escape the real world, go into an artificial one. That all disease will disappear and no more grieving will happen. You know what that's called? It's called heaven. God is the one in charge of that one, not a machine. Never will be. If a machine takes over and it creates a heaven on earth, it's going to be a hell. And I believe there will be severe, severe consequences for our culture if we're the ones to embrace it. Someone's going to embrace it. Let us not be the ones that have to be on the cutting edge of this one. What if the desire to be the first is going to end up making something horrible and we're all going to regret it? I do mean all, because it's going to impact us all here in the country. Everyone will be thwarted by this. No one's going to be able to escape. By the way, did you know in China, they actually have apps to track if someone's homeless? And if they're allowed to be given to? And if you are too close to somebody, it will deduct from your social credit score. You know, that used to be theorized that this would happen. And people said, no one's going to do that. And now we're trying to push for this in the West. Correction, not try. We did try. And that was called COVID. And people had tracking apps. Oh, you got too close to this person. Bad. How dare you? How dare they? We tried, and thankfully that group failed. But it didn't fail in China. They got more power. And the government now controls their people to such an extent that they can tell folks if a homeless person's too close to them. And not to give them any handouts, otherwise they lose credit score. Meaning they can't travel. They can't even buy things. You know what that sounds like? The mark of the beast. Now imagine an AI controlling that. An AI that runs the government. No one's not going to run it like completely. Oh yeah, there's going to be the handlers. Well, the handlers are going to say, ooh, look what we can do. We can control the masses this way. Then one day, an evil dictator will come along and say, I'm going to use this for my own evil, vile purposes. And the whole country will be subjected to horrible, horrible acts. And we're not going to have the ability to resist it because the government is controlled by a machine that is heartless, that only answers to him. That's one thing that the AI enthusiasts never understood. They don't understand human nature, that this will be what happens. Give people a nuke, what are they going to do with it? We didn't even have a nuke for a full year before our people are like, let's use this.
You serious?
Yes, I am serious. Think about that. We didn't even have it for a full year before we were like, let's test this on people. I don't believe that we ever should have used it on Japan. The people that say that we should have are sick. I know their arguments. Oh, people would have died if we went to Japan. I've heard that they were actually in the process of getting ready to surrender, but our desire for unconditional surrender meant that a massive amount of people were going to have to die. It was not necessary. And the people that wanted it to be necessary are those that like death. Sure, I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but here's the reason why it concerns me so much with that mentality. Because we're the cutting edge of AI doing something similar. It's already being used to terrible effect. It will not take much for us to wake up one day and realize the AI has gone too far, that companies have gone too far. And we will be the target of it. Because it's already happening in China. I saw a government organization that was advertising a national surveillance tool. I was in DC at the time. I saw this thing on full display at an event. I thought, you know what? Tyranny has come to the United States. This was back in 2018, I believe. Maybe 17, I don't remember. And they were using Chinese footage, of which China was about ready to use it on their own people to start going after people in Hong Kong. And here was our government funding it. Oh, and the Chinese people were in charge of the project. Like, you could see them. They were shouting at each other in Mandarin. Didn't stop our government from investing in that. Now we all know what it's capable of. And all those that warned about it were like, well, we're vindicated, but at what cost? Now it's a necessary evil to invest in that sort of stuff. Won't be necessary when people suddenly have to pay the price. And then like, well, we didn't know. Of course you didn't. No one knows. No one has, and this is the thing I started covering the other day. No one has the ability to have foresight. No one has the ability to play out something in their mind and come to a conclusion and say, this is bad. Because we know how people behave. I'm going to give this candy to a kid. And I'm just going to assume they're not going to eat it. What? There's a very high likelihood that kid will eat the candy. Some of them will not. Some of them will look up at you and offer it back. Some of them will take it and offer it to a friend. The majority of them stick it right into their mouth. You know what those sorts of people end up becoming? They end up becoming leaders. Because they take and they don't care. They don't hand it to somebody else. They take it for themselves. So then they get older and then they have power. And then you come along and offer them a tool of surveillance and power. What do you think they're going to do with it? Here's some candy. I'm going to put it right back because that's too dangerous. Said no government agency ever. No, it's always the argument of, oh, well, if we don't use it, someone else will. Yeah, a tyrant will use it. So you want to be the tyrant. Congratulations. You've joined the club just like so many others before you. And it angers me about this. It angers me because all the warning signs are there. And right now there is a growing push to use AI for government. This is one of the reasons why I would never make a good politician. I'm too upfront about this sort of stuff, and I hate it. And I would probably be picked off immediately because I believe too much that evil people are going to abuse things. I used to think that people that said that sort of stuff were just kind of finding excuses. And then I grew up and I realized, wait a minute, no, that's like a very legit thing that can happen. I've seen it happen to politicians already. People that should have been there and able to make a difference, and they can't now. Well, I did not get very far on this. I got too distracted with my stories and whatnot. Whatever. Well, if you found something interesting, would you consider liking the stream? And if you disliked it, if you think I'm off my rocker, feel free to dislike it. I know I'm one of very few people right now saying some of this stuff. Some people are saying it, and more people are waking up to us. But I've been saying this for years. And there's some things where people will not go. And one of them is the plan to hand over our government to an AI. Not a lot of people are talking about this yet. But eventually they will. I do believe that. And when that sort of stuff happens, it's going to become a hot topic. And our country is going to have a very tough time coming to terms with it. Because it will happen in a moment. I don't think that most of us will even have a choice in the matter. We'll wake up one day and it'll turn out that whether it's the Trump administration or the next administration, whoever that is, ends up saying, hey, you know what? We realize that crime is becoming a huge problem. We're just going to start analyzing stuff with robots. And it'll start out benign like that. And then they'll say, hey, that was efficient. Let's expand it to another area. How do I know? Because Elon Musk already did it. And nobody batted an eye. Well, correction, there were many people that got frustrated with that, but no one stopped him. Most people are just happy to get rid of the fraud. And I'm not saying you don't get rid of the fraud, but I'm saying that the moment you take it out of a human being's hands and put it into a machine, that's no better. That's worse. It will start out better because the devil has to convince you first before he allows something terrible to be used. Let the Chinese figure this out. What? Let China get ahead? Yes, because I think that there's going to be a horrible curse with this. Kind of going back around to how this whole thing started. I mentioned earlier about curses. There are some things that are doomed from the start. And right now, AI is an idol. People are treating it like a god. Some people are. And the next generation will treat it even more so. So yeah, I do believe there will be a curse, because it will be mankind trying to replace their creator with something like that. And we will see our nation pay a horrible price the day that happens. What that price is, we don't fully understand. But there will be a cost. I'd rather let the Chinese find that out than us. Because I do think it will destroy them if they do invest into it. And that'll be good, because then the CCP will be gone. All because they made a deal with the devil, which they already have. That just would allow them to double down on it. Not like anyone ever consults me about this stuff. That's a sobering thought. The world is going to make decisions, and you will have no say in it. That's just disheartening. But that's kind of the way things are meant to be. Very few people are going to rule. And of those that rule, I dare say the vast majority of them are going to be evil rulers. It kind of is the lot of rulers. They feel the power and they're like, yes, I can abuse this. I can make millions off of it. And if they don't feel it to begin with, they eventually will. And eventually they'll say, yes, I like this power. And those people are the ones that are going to be given the authority in this matter. I'm not happy about that in the slightest. I think that's a horrible thing. But here's the thing. They've been given the authority. Despite me not being happy about it, they've been given the authority to rule this nation and to throw it into the dirt if they so desire. There's nothing we can do about it. Is this me giving up? In a way. But not quite the way that other people would probably put it. This is me realizing that, you know what? Mankind is going to behave a certain way. The prophets mentioned about this when they would look at Israel and say, Lord, these people are wicked and stubborn. They never listen. Then God would judge them. And the prophet would be vindicated, but at the cost of his nation. We don't know why God gives the nation over to evil men. That's something that will continue to baffle me. But here's the thing. You can't change everybody. Especially leaders who feel power. They do not want to ever surrender it. And so if you come along and say, hey, you're destroying people's futures. You're like, so what? They think that they're doing a good thing. And if you're in that position, it's inevitable that you will make a decision that somebody will disagree with. God has still given the person who is the ruler the authority, even if they are a bad ruler, even if they make horrible, horrible mistakes. And it takes patience and honestly some mercy to be able to look at a ruler and say, I forgive you for what you are doing. Throughout history, Christians have been downtrodden, beaten, thrown into prisons, executed by pointing people back to God. The devil is trying to destroy this world. He can't win. So thus he wants to make sure as many souls perish as he can. So thus he wants to bribe our rulers with every fantasy that they can imagine, every promise that never will happen, but he wants to promise them everything just so they will turn to him, and he will then destroy them. That is something that has continued to amaze me, that there are people in this world that are so desperate for power, they will give anything to hold on to it. and they will make a deal with the devil to make it happen. See, it's not necessarily that God is the one that is putting these people into power. Sometimes it's the devil, and God allows it. We don't understand necessarily why God allows some of those things to happen. Why does he allow a tyrant to rule at all? Well, we don't know about cosmic politics. But for whatever reason, the devil was allowed to have immense sway over this world. He was allowed to persuade people and allow them to have their deepest, darkest desires come to pass if they just turn to him. If they turn to the dark one, they get that. If they turn to God, they don't necessarily get a whole lot of wealth or power. Turning to God will usually get you punished in the eyes of the world. That's how things are meant to be. God made it so that people that turn to the truth would be persecuted. It's part of how he makes sure that we know better about who is in the right, because the world will hate them. It's kind of weird how that happens, but that's how things are meant to be. We can't change that. All we can do is identify its pattern. So thus rulers will be tempted, and they will sell people out. And they will think that they're doing good, when in the end they're doing something horrible and evil. And that will be the case from now until the end. Because no man can rule the way God can. And one day, Christ will come and rule. And he will be over the nations. And then true peace and true paradise will happen. There's a moment in Revelation where it mentions about there being a time where the people of earth get to live, both the godly and the ungodly get to live in a paradise. All evil things will come to an end. All death and destruction. The world will be made like it was in Genesis. And yet, even so, with all that, the people of earth will eventually become disgusted with it. Paradise they will come to despise, and they will say, "Let us rise up against God." And God will say, basically, this is what humanity does. And he's going to smite humanity one last time. Paradise is impossible to be made if you are human, but it's easy when you are the creator, and God will eventually bring about that paradise. And those who believe in him will get the chance to see that paradise and to live and thrive in it. What does that look like? We don't know. We don't fully understand. We live in a broken world. How could we understand? All we can do is hope, pray, and look forward to that day that we'll get to finally see what paradise is, to no longer have to deal with the evils of this world. instead to finally feel what it's like to have true peace and prosperity. Not like prosperity like what our government wants us to think. Oh, you'll be wealthy, you'll be happy. No. The most important thing really is, you could say, like spiritual honor. That's what's more important. It's adhering to truth. It's living in wisdom. Treasure means nothing. Wealth and prosperity means nothing without wisdom. And one day God will give us a chance to see true prosperity. During that time, there will be no more rust. There will be no more rot. Animals will be kind, and savage beasts of today be gentle and kind. Imagine that. Well, we're going to call it there. I got halfway of what I wanted to. This is one of the most difficult parts right here because there's so much detail in that character, in this one right here. The rest of it's fairly benign. The woman back here is a silhouette because you're not supposed to actually see her. It's a shadow in his mind that he's even forgotten what she looks like. The letter is going to be fairly easy to do, in my opinion. And then Yukon's going to be in the shadows, and that's going to be a lot easier. It's the fire that's throwing me for a loop here. So, yeah, I expect I'll probably fight with this a few more days. I got a lot of time off for the coming holidays, so I'll be streaming this as much as I can until it is completed. Goal, get it done before the new year, because I want the next project to kind of dominate the new year. This one has taken far too long. All right, well, there's no real ability right now to raid anywhere. I don't see a whole lot right now. There's no activity right now, so we're just going to call it there. Thanks to anybody who showed up for this. Much appreciated for your time. Hope you have a pleasant evening and morning, everybody, wherever you are. Just a reminder, no matter what happens in this world, whether you feel blessed or cursed, be civil to one another. Show some kindness. We definitely need more of that these days. And civility. Oh, we need civility. Until then, folks, have a very pleasant evening.